One of my goals this year in terms of my career was being able to read a UX related book at least once a month. And in order to be able to have a little bit more accountability for that, I started or restarted a book club with the Hexagon UX community, and so far we've been reading our 4th book. It's April, so I'm really happy that we are on track. Here's my quick review of the books we've read so far. So the first book that we kicked off the year with is Accessibility for Everyone from Laura Kalbag. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. So that book was really interesting in terms of like accessibility 101. I feel like it was very useful if you are someone who cares and really want to make your design more inclusive. And I think it did a really good job at like debusting myths around accessibility, like the fact that accessibility isn't nice or doesn't look good. And it also did a really good job at giving resources depending on the type of work that you do. Because something that I found really interesting about this book is that she talked about how inclusive or accessible design is really the work of not just the designer on the team, but it should be the work of everyone. And so in that book, there are resources for UX people, but there's also resources for developers. I find that it was helpful to give me words into how to talk with developers about accessibility. So in that sense, I found that this book was very actionable and gave concrete tips that I could see myself using them. Something that came up a lot while we were talking about it in the book club is that the book feels very accessible. When reading it, I felt like it was really easy to read, very comfortable. They chose a font size that was really comfortable, and I love that they were incorporating a lot of images to show examples of websites that had done a really good job, and also that they provided links. So I find that for someone who's reading more, for her work, it was super helpful for me, and I'll definitely keep that book. I would not say on the shelf because I purchased it online, but I'll definitely keep that book not too far and refer to it pretty often. The second book that we read is called 100 Things Every Designer Needs to Know About People. It's from Susan M. Weinstein. Sorry about that. And I thought this book was really interesting. There was a lot of like facts and experiments about people's perception, visual perception, or the way that people have cognitive, like mental bias and how they interpret information. So for me, coming from a background in psychology, I felt that there were maybe a little bit of repetition. There was a lot of things that I already knew or studies I had seen before. There were a few actionable tips here and there that I'm going to keep. That being said, even though that was a really interesting read, and what is fun is that, each thing that you learn about people is individually talked about. So you can just scroll. You can just look at any page or any section of the book and read just that one section without feeling lost. So that's really nice. But what I found personally was at the end of the book, I found that it's not necessarily something that I'm going to go back to or use a lot with my work. I found it really interesting, but I found myself kind of longing for something a bit more actionable. Like, okay, I know all that information, but how will that apply to my web and app design? I was not too sure. So I recommend it if you want to read something really interesting about psychology, bite-sized type of thing, a nice stable read, but not necessarily if you're looking for more, actionable tips for your UX career. Last but not least, for this quarterly UX book club review is The User Experience Team of One from Leah Bully. I hope, again, sorry for the names. This is a book that I had heard a lot about, so I was really looking forward to reading it, and I really relate to that because I am a UX person, team of one, so I was really looking forward to reading this book, and it did not disappoint. But I would say, like, generally, if you are someone who is getting started in UX, or you don't necessarily have a big team, or you're alone on your team, that's a really good point of reference. I found it interesting to read it all to have an overview and idea of the content, but how I'm going to use it in the future is more if I want to re-explore a specific technique. And she talks about in the book also how to evangelize or talk about UX with people who are less familiar with it, which I think is still very relevant, because even though UX has been becoming a lot more popular, especially in the past couple of years, there are still people part of your team in development or project management for whom UX can still seem a little bit blurry. And the way she explains it is really interesting, is that because user experience, designer or research, even though it's a big part of your work, it kind of belongs to everyone on the team. It's not just the job of the designer or the researcher to take care of the user experience. The developers also should care, and it's an important part of their work, and project manager too. So everyone working on project is influencing the user experience, but not everyone is a user experience designer, if that makes any sense. But for me, that was very enlightening to read more about the background of UX. And what I thought was interesting for anyone looking to do a little bit of freelance work, she gives an idea of how to structure your work and how long things will take. I think it will be very helpful for people who are looking to work freelance to better manage their time and better bill clients, or let them know what to expect in terms of hiring a UX consultant. So these were the 3 books that we read in the past 3 months. There will be a next quarterly review in about 3 months. Right now we are reading Hooked, which is all about what makes people come back to a specific project, which I'm feeling a little bit conflicted about, but we'll see. I'm not completely done with it. Let me know in the comments below if there's any UX book that you really enjoyed. Maybe we'll put it on our list. And thanks for watching. Bye.